That rhythmic mechanical breathing is one of the most recognized sounds in cinema history. It belongs to a machine, and that machine is the only reason the man inside it is still alive. Darth Vader's suit is a walking intensive care unit, a suit of combat armor, and depending on the source, a carefully engineered prison. Every component, from the dome of his helmet to the soles of his boots, was built with a specific function. Some of those functions are obvious, others are buried deep in expanded lore, and several of them were placed there to ensure the man trapped inside never grew powerful enough to challenge the master who built it. Both Canon and Legends material provide detailed technical breakdowns of the suit's systems. Where both sources agree, the facts are treated as confirmed. Where they diverge, the distinction is noted. The helmet is the most important part of the entire suit. That assessment comes directly from official canon material published on StarWars.com. Without it, Vader would not survive more than a few minutes. The article breaks it down even further. The helmet is made up of 3 separate components that lock together: the outer shell, the primary mask, and the neck gaiter. Each one performs a different function. Together, they form a self-contained life support system for Vader's head and upper airway. The outer shell is the piece responsible for Vader's famous silhouette, the smooth, rounded dome that flares out at the back of the neck. It was constructed from contoured durasteel, obsidian, and plasteel, a combination chosen for extreme impact resistance. In Legends material, there are references to the shell being further strengthened through dark side alchemy, though current canon has not confirmed that detail. However, the outer shell is not just armor. It locks the other 2 helmet components into place using a powerful magnetic seal. That seal is critical to the suit's function. If the mask beneath it shifts even slightly during combat, the entire respiratory system could be compromised. A gap of even a fraction of a centimeter would allow unfiltered air to reach Vader's damaged lungs, air that could cause further tissue deterioration or trigger a respiratory crisis. As a result, once the helmet is sealed, it stays locked until it is removed in a controlled, pressurized environment. The outer shell protected the systems beneath it. However, the real engineering sat directly underneath, built into the piece that covered Vader's ruined face. Beneath the shell sits the primary mask. This is where the most complex engineering resides. The mask covers Vader's entire face, his eyes, the remnants of his nose, his mouth. All of it sits behind the curved black faceplate. Built into the faceplate are the red-tinted lenses that serve as Vader's replacement eyes. After Mustafar, his natural eyesight was severely damaged. In both canon and legend sources, the lenses compensate by calibrating colors to adjust for his weakened retinas and by enhancing his field of view well beyond normal human range. They also gave Vader access to infrared and ultraviolet spectrums, meaning he could see in total darkness and detect heat signatures invisible to everyone around him. Every Imperial officer who ever stood in front of Vader trying to maintain composure was being scanned in wavelengths of light they did not know existed. His lenses could read their body heat, their stress responses, and their physical state in real time. The mask also houses the respiratory system, the single most critical component of the suit. Vader's lungs were too badly burned to process air on their own. The system built into the mask takes in ambient air, filters out contaminants, pressurizes it to a level his damaged tissue can tolerate, and pumps it into his lungs at a controlled rate. When he exhales, the system vents the air back out through the mask's grills. That cycle, the pump in, the vent out, produces the breathing sound. It never stops. It cannot stop. In James Luceno's novel, that sound meant Vader could never truly sleep. The constant rhythm of his own respirator, echoing inside his helmet just inches from his ears, kept him in a permanent state of semi-wakefulness. When he did manage to drift off, the results were rarely restful. He was frequently awakened by disturbing visions, images of Obi-Wan Kenobi, memories of Padme Amidala, the sounds and sensations of Mustafar replaying on a loop inside his damaged mind. Combined with the discomfort of the neural needles and the constant hiss of the respirator, Vader existed in a state of near-permanent exhaustion that only the dark side of the Force could sustain. In addition to breathing, the mask works in coordination with the belt's climate controls to regulate Vader's body temperature, a function explored further in the belt section below. Then there is the vocabulator, the device responsible for Vader's voice. His real voice was damaged beyond recognition by the searing gases he inhaled. In canon, the Star Wars Inside Intel article places the voice processing in the neck gaiter. In Legends, the vocabulator is housed in the lower mask assembly. Regardless of its precise location, it takes whatever sounds his scarred throat can produce and processes them into that deep, resonant bass that the entire galaxy has associated with incoming danger. According to available lore, a softer, more natural-sounding voice modulation was entirely possible with the technology available. But that was not the goal. The voice was engineered to project authority and menace. The mask handled Vader's breathing, his sight, and his voice. However, the third helmet component handles something even more basic, something most people never think about when they picture Darth Vader. The third component of the helmet is rarely discussed, but it changes the entire picture of Vader's daily existence: the neck gaiter. This ribbed, flexible collar wraps around Vader's neck and connects the helmet assembly to the body of the suit. Its primary function is structural. It supports the considerable weight of the helmet and protects Vader's damaged cervical spine from the strain of that load. However, the gaiter also contains a nutrient feeding tube, a detail that reveals how completely Vader's normal human functions were stripped away. Vader cannot eat. His mouth, throat, and esophagus were too badly damaged by the fires and by the surgical reconstruction that followed. The feeding tube runs down through the gaiter and connects to the suit's internal nutrition systems, delivering a liquid nutrient paste directly to his body. In Legends, the substance was identified as RepMed VitaPaste, and multiple sources note that it tasted terrible. The delivery system largely bypasses Vader's mouth entirely. He does not chew food. He does not sit down to a meal. He receives sustenance the way a patient in intensive care does, through a tube, on a schedule, with no choice in the matter. Legend sources describe feeding straws accessible inside the grills of his mask. However, Vader almost never used them in the presence of others. The image of the galaxy's most feared enforcer consuming nutrients through a straw was not one the Empire intended to publicize. The helmet kept Vader alive from the neck up. Below it, the suit's operational brain managed everything else, and it sat right in the center of his chest. Below the helmet sits the chest plate and its control panel. This is the operational brain of the entire suit. The chest plate is a thick slab of armored durasteel that covers Vader's damaged ribcage and pectoral region, extending outward to the black shoulder pauldrons over his upper arms. Beneath all of that armor sits the central life support computer, the processor that monitors and regulates every system in the suit simultaneously: his breathing rate, his heartbeat, his blood filtration, his neural interface calibrations. All of it feeds data back to this central processor, which, according to Legend sources, could run autonomously for weeks at a time before requiring maintenance. The most recognizable feature on the chest plate, however, is the illuminated control panel in the center of Vader's torso. Those blinking lights and colored buttons that have appeared in every film, but have rarely been explained. In canon, the official position from Lucasfilm is that the specific functions of each button remain purposefully mysterious. However, Legends material, particularly Daniel Wallace's reference book, broke them down in detail. According to Wallace, the top row contains 3 data readout switches arranged vertically. The top switch displays neural system data. The middle switch shows respiratory system data. The bottom switch tracks circulatory system data. Together, these 3 readouts function as a medical dashboard built into Vader's chest. Below the readouts sit 2 buttons, a blue one that engages the suit's auto control functions, allowing the computer to manage all systems automatically, and a red one that activates manual override, giving Vader direct control of his own life support. Under normal conditions, Vader operated on auto control. Manual override was reserved for combat situations or emergencies where he needed to adjust his own systems mid-action. Below those sit 4 additional switches. The gray ones are program switches Vader could customize for different operational presets. Then there's 1 red switch, a system reset. In Legends, activating this reset would temporarily shut down the suit's entire life support, leaving Vader unprotected until the reboot was completed. During that window, he was as vulnerable as any critically injured man without medical support. That vulnerability was not an accident. Emperor Palpatine knew exactly what the reset switch represented. In Luceno's novel, Palpatine reveals that he was intimately familiar with every element of the suit's circuitry, including the fact that its electronics were highly vulnerable to electrical discharges. As a result, at any moment, Palpatine could use Force lightning to overload the chest panel, crash the respirator, and bring Vader to his knees. The suit's most dangerous weakness was engineered into it as a control mechanism. The most feared enforcer in the galaxy was wearing his own off switch on his chest. His master held the trigger. This dynamic is confirmed in canon through Kieron Gillen's Darth Vader issues 23 to 24. In that storyline, Dr. Silo, one of the Imperial scientists involved in Vader's reconstruction, reveals that he installed a hidden backdoor in the suit's programming. With a small gray device, Silo shuts Vader down completely. The suit goes dark. Every system fails simultaneously. Vader collapses, unable to move or breathe. It takes all of Vader's connection to the dark side to override the shutdown and claw his systems back online. But that moment reveals the core truth of Vader's existence. Regardless of how many Jedi he struck down or how many star systems feared his name, he was always one signal away from total helplessness. The suit's vulnerability extended beyond Palpatine and Silo. According to canon sources, the suit was also susceptible to hacking by skilled operators. A competent technician with the right access codes could interface with the central suit computer and send holo messages on Vader's behalf, manipulate his vocabulary to make him speak, or force his mechanical limbs to move against his will. The suit that projected invincibility to the galaxy was, in technical terms, a network system with exploitable access points. Anyone with the knowledge and the nerve to try could theoretically puppet the most feared man in the Empire from a remote terminal. In Legends, the monitoring panel on his chest beeped frequently and for no clear reason. The lights on the readouts seemed to serve no practical purpose beyond acting as steady, visible reminders of Vader's dependence on the machine. Every blinking indicator was a small signal that, without the technology wrapped around him, he would cease to exist. There is also an out-of-universe detail about the chest plate worth noting. In The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, the chest plate includes 3 lines of text etched below the vertical slots. The text is not written in Aurebesh, the standard written language of the Star Wars galaxy. It is written in Hebrew. The most widely cited translation reads approximately, "His deeds will not be forgiven until he merits." However, several of the characters appear upside down or incomplete, and researchers who examined the original prop, including illustrators Chris Reif and Chris Travis during their work on the Star Wars Blueprints book, concluded the text may be decorative rather than a coherent message. The translation remains disputed. George Lucas never provided an official explanation for why the text is there. However, for a character like Anakin Skywalker, a man seeking redemption he believed he can never earn, even the possibility of that meaning is difficult to ignore. The chestplate controls Vader's systems from the outside. Underneath all of that armor, pressed directly against his ruined skin, sat the layer that caused him the most constant suffering. Underneath the external armor, pressed directly against what remains of Vader's skin, is a multi-ply body glove made of specialized black-ribbed fabric. This garment covers him from neck to fingertips to toes. It is the innermost layer. The body glove serves as the barrier between Vader's damaged organic tissue and the mechanical systems that sustain him. His skin, scarred beyond recognition across most of his body, was never able to fully heal. Open wounds persisted for years after Mustafar. Scar tissue formed over some areas, but other regions remained raw and exposed. The body glove provided a sterile barrier over this fragile tissue, reducing the constant risk of infection that came with living inside a mechanical apparatus 24 hours a day. Combined with the outer durasteel and plastoid components, the body glove makes the suit effectively fireproof. It is not, however, waterproof or fully lightsaber resistant. A direct lightsaber strike could still penetrate the layers beneath the outer armor. During the duel with Luke Skywalker on Cloud City, Luke managed to slash Vader's shoulder, a hit that caused real damage to the suit and the prosthetic systems underneath. According to canon sources, Vader maintained spare suits aboard his flagship for exactly this kind of situation. When the armor was damaged in combat, he could replace the compromised external components. However, the internal systems, the neural interface, the respirator connections, the prosthetic attachment points, could not be swapped as easily. More importantly, the body glove houses the SynthNet neural interface. This system allows Vader to move his artificial limbs. His prosthetic arms and legs are connected to his remaining organic tissue through synthetic neural fibers woven directly into the fabric. These fibers carry electrical signals from Vader's brain into the prosthetics, translating his intent into physical motion. Those neural connections, however, came at a cost that never stops. The interface requires neural needles that pierce directly into Vader's scalp and along his spine, creating permanent contact with raw, damaged nerve endings. The pain from those contact points is constant. In Legends, Vader suspected, with good reason, that Palpatine chose this method intentionally. More advanced, less painful neural interfaces existed in the galaxy. Vader's suit did not use them. The pain served a specific function within Sith philosophy. For a dark side practitioner, physical suffering fuels anger. Anger fuels hatred. Hatred fuels power. The suit was engineered to keep Vader in a permanent state of low-grade agony, feeding his connection to the dark side and keeping him at the emotional frequency Palpatine required. Yet the suit went further still. Per the 3D reconstruction log, the armor continuously injected a substance called Kuhanin into Vader's body, a chemical compound created through Sith alchemy. Kuhanin provided increased physical strength and vitality while partially dampening Vader's pain receptors. It functioned as a performance-enhancing compound flowing through his systems at all times, enough relief to keep him combat-ready, not enough to let him forget the suffering. Between the pain, the noise, the chemical injections, and the sleeplessness, Vader operated under conditions that would have broken anyone else, and the suit that sustained all of it remained under the ultimate control of someone else. The body glove kept Vader's damaged skin sealed and his prosthetics connected. Around his waist, another system managed the environment that kept everything functioning. The system's status belt around Vader's waist is a fully operational command center for the suit's climate and atmospheric regulation. Attached to the belt are two system function boxes. The right one controls temperature regulation, allowing Vader to adjust his internal climate for any environment, from sub-zero ice fields to scorching deserts. After Mustafar, his nervous system was so badly damaged that his body lost much of its natural ability to control its own heat, making this function essential to his survival. The left one controls the respiratory system's environmental adaptations, enabling the suit to handle toxic atmospheres, low oxygen environments, and brief exposure to vacuum. Together, these two devices meant Vader could operate in conditions that would incapacitate an unprotected human, a tactical advantage aboard space stations and during ship-to-ship operations. Between the belt and the body glove sits a plastoid girdle, a rigid protective piece that wraps around Vader's midsection and shields his damaged abdominal organs. Given that his internal organs were already compromised by the fire damage, this girdle served as essential medical protection. Without it, a strong blow to his abdomen could rupture organs that were barely functioning. Vader was in combat constantly. This was not ceremonial armor. It was battle gear that took sustained punishment across 2 decades of continuous warfare. The belt regulated Vader's environment. Above it, the armor's heaviest components shaped how he fought, and what he lost in order to fight at all. Across his shoulders sat heavy pauldrons, armored plates estimated in Legends to weigh over 12 kilograms on each side. These shoulder guards absorbed blaster bolts and deflected glancing lightsaber strikes. They contributed to one of the suit's most significant drawbacks: its total weight. Fully assembled, the suit weighed approximately 120 kilograms, over 260 pounds of armor, circuitry, life support, and prosthetic hardware pressing down on Vader's body at all times. The man who had once been one of the most agile fighters in the Jedi Order could no longer move that way. His former combat style, acrobatic, fast, airborne, was physically impossible inside the suit. In Luceno's novel, this adaptation is described in detail. In the weeks following reconstruction, Vader struggled with every basic movement. His prosthetic legs did not respond the way organic limbs would. The pneumatic mechanisms providing joint articulation were sometimes sluggish, sometimes jerky, introducing half-second delays between thought and action. The body glove's sleeves bunched at the wrists and sagged at the elbows. Only his right arm, the prosthetic he had received years earlier after Count Dooku severed his original hand, felt close to familiar. Over the months and years that followed, Vader developed an entirely new lightsaber form built around the suit's constraints. Where Anakin Skywalker had been fast and acrobatic, Darth Vader became slow and devastatingly powerful. He used the suit's mass as leverage, putting the full weight behind every swing. He compensated for lost agility by relying on the Force, telekinesis, object manipulation, and battlefield control in ways Anakin never needed to employ. By the era of the original trilogy, Vader had fully mastered this approach. He was no longer the quickest blade in the room, he was the most relentless. Opponents who attempted to use speed and footwork to find openings discovered that Vader simply did not give ground. He advanced, always forward, always pressing, each step carrying the full momentum of the suit. The Force, amplified by years of channel pain and anger, filled in every gap his body could no longer cover. However, the discomfort never left. Each step carried the memory of what his legs used to feel like. Every swing of his lightsaber echoed with the absence of the arm that was no longer there. Luciano described those quiet moments with precision. All in all, he thought, this is not living. This was solitary confinement, prison of the war's sword, continual torture. He was nothing more than wreckage. That passage captures what the suit meant to the man inside it. Not salvation, not power, wreckage. The real-world design of the suit reinforces this interpretation. Costume designer John Mallow and sculptor Brian Muir built the original armor for A New Hope on a budget of approximately $1,173. Muir sculpted the helmet. Mallow drew from Ralph McQuarrie's concept art, which blended samurai armor with a deliberate skull motif. Mallow built on that foundation, using his expertise in military history, incorporating elements from World War I gas masks, German military helmets, a motorcycle suit, and clerical robes. The resemblance between Vader's mask and a human skull was an intentional design choice by McQuarrie, a visual statement that the man inside was already closer to something gone than something alive. Actor David Prowse wore the suit on set, James Earl Jones provided the voice, and Ben Burtt created the breathing sound by recording himself breathing through a scuba regulator. Every creative decision pointed in the same direction. This was a man entombed in machinery, more medical equipment than a warrior's armor, more prison than protection. The weight of the suit defined how Vader moved. Below all of that mass, his boots carried functions that went far beyond simply walking. Vader's boots perform far more functions than most sources acknowledge. After losing both legs below the knee, his lower limbs were replaced with mechanical prosthetics filled with Durasteel alloy shanks connected to the hinged structure of his boots. These boots were tall, heavy, and combat grade, designed to support the full mass of the armor above. Built into the soles was a ferromagnetic core. When activated through mouth-operated controls inside the helmet, this core generated a magnetic field powerful enough to lock Vader's boots onto metallic surfaces. He could walk across the exterior hull of a Star Destroyer in zero gravity, maintain footing on an unstable deck during combat, or anchor himself to the floor while using telekinesis with both hands. For someone who spent the majority of his time aboard warships and battle stations, this was a tactical necessity. The boots themselves were thick-soled and all-terrain rated, designed to function across ice, volcanic rock, metal deck plating, sand, and any other surface the Empire's enforcer might encounter. The heavy treads and reinforced structure also served a secondary purpose. The sound they produce, that slow, echoing, rhythmic footfall that preceded Vader down every corridor, became another psychological weapon. Aboard the Death Star, aboard Star Destroyers, and in the halls of Imperial command stations, officers and troops could hear Vader approaching long before they saw him. That sound alone was enough to silence conversations, straighten postures, and raise heart rates. The prosthetic legs connecting to the boots use mechanical hinges rather than the more advanced articulation available in the galaxy, another deliberate limitation consistent with the suit's design philosophy. The boots anchored Vader to the ground. Behind him, one final piece of external armor completed the silhouette and served a purpose most people never considered. The cape appears aesthetic at first glance, a long black coat adding to Vader's silhouette. It was woven from armor weave, a specialized combat fabric durable enough to resist blaster fire and burning fuel. The cape extends from Vader's shoulders past his boots, and that full body length was by design. It acts as a protective shroud over the suit's exposed joints, gears, and circuitry, preventing foreign particles, dust, debris, ash, and sand from infiltrating the gaps between armor plates and damaging the mechanical systems beneath. Over time, even microscopic grit could accumulate between gears, corrode wiring, and degrade prosthetic joints. The cape prevented that from happening. In Legends, one source specifically notes the cape protected Vader from sand, the material that Anakin Skywalker once described as coarse and rough and irritating. For the suit's mechanical systems, that description was technically accurate. Sand was a genuine threat to functionality. The cape also contributed to the visual authority established by the suit's historical design influences purposes. In medieval and military tradition, a commander's cloak signaled rank and power. In practical terms, it made Vader look larger, more ancient, and more imposing. When he moved through an Imperial corridor with that black fabric in motion behind him, the visual effect communicated something beyond a man in armor, and for Palpatine's purposes, that visual was part of the function. By the time the armor was complete, nothing about it was random. Every material, every limitation, every built-in weakness reflected deliberate choices made after Mustafar. What emerged was more than a medical device. It was a system that determined how its wearer moved, fought, and survived. The suit did not just replace what Anakin Skywalker had lost, it changed him. It shaped his combat style, set clear physical limits, and tied his life to machinery that could be monitored and, if needed, shut down. He remained powerful, but he was never fully independent. To the galaxy, Darth Vader looked unstoppable, the physical symbol of Imperial authority. The image worked. The truth was more fragile. Every step, every breath, every display of strength depended on technology that required constant control and oversight. The armor projected dominance. Its function depended on maintenance. That is the core truth of Darth Vader's suit. It was a brilliant solution to catastrophic injury, one that preserved immense power while locking that power inside rigid boundaries. It kept him alive long enough to serve the Empire, and in the end, it kept him alive long enough to make his own final choice. If you want to see the complete story of the man trapped inside the suit, from the fall on Mustafar to the final act on the Death Star, watch the complete story of Darth Vader. And if you want to go even further back, to the very beginning of the Force and the order that Anakin Skywalker was born into, Dawn of the Jedi, the complete timeline of the ancient Jedi Order, covers the full origin. Both are available on this channel right now.